What's going on, guys? IkeGuitar here. Today we are talking about the Gibson guitar tier list. We're going to be going through these tiers, picking out some of Gibson's mainline styles of guitar. And I say style because there are so many different Gibson iterations of classic styles over the years. We're not doing the Gibson custom shop petrified Duxanus unobtainium fret wire guitars that, they make, and we're not doing signature models. We're not doing things like the Howard Roberts or the Trini Lopez. We're not doing anything like that. We're just going for Gibson standard variations, and we're going to be ranking them from the best to the worst. Let's dive in. All right, first guitar, the Gibson Explorer. Hard choice. I'm going with B. All right, so offset Gibsons are great, but you're going to have to pick and choose your battles. I prefer the Flying V, okay? But as far as offsets are concerned, the Gibson Explorers are cool. They meet a niche, but they're not going to be guitars you buy every day. So unless you love this Gibson-styled guitar and you don't love maybe a Fender-styled offset, I would go for it. I'm not going to say no to a nice Explorer, but I prefer to keep this in B for that reason. Very playable, very fun looking, but not super practical. The 339, we are going hard in the paint already this morning. Big hot takes. I'm putting the 339 into D. Worthless, utter garbage, trash, not worth your time. 339s are a Les Paul sized 335, effectively, with some variation. We're not making any bold claims today, but the reason why I put this in D is that the 339, unless you like the size of a Les Paul and you like the look of a 335, that's pretty much all you get. It's just a mediocre semi-hollow guitar. They're way too expensive. Everyone is selling these Memphis custom shop 339s nowadays. These are the modern takes. They stopped making them for a while, but effectively what happened was when Memphis Custom Shop got going, they started making 339s, and they're all custom shop, but they're not really that great of a guitar. 339s are a waste of your time and money. You will never sell them, and people will make fun of you for not having a real 335. All right, the next guitar, in no particular order, by the way, the Gibson 345. I'm putting that into B, okay? 345s are cool. They're 335s with a Veritone switch. It's effectively a second potentiometer, and the guitars happen to be wired in stereo stock, right? So if you get a vintage 345, they're going to be in stereo. BB King has a 355, which is the more luxurious version, also with a Veritone switch. They're not that great. If you enjoy a 345, most everybody gets them modded for mono anyway. I would almost prefer you just buy a 335 unless you want these, you want the nice ornamentation of the guitar. You like binding on the headstock. You like gold hardware. You like the custom made stickers, things like that. Not really worth your time, not worth the extra scratch because you're going to end up getting them mono anyway. And most of them did not have stop tail bridges. Big issue with a lot of 335ers is that they bought their 345, their 355, had it converted to mono, and modded for the stop tail, which leaves snake bites, which are the screws from an old Bigsby, or a trapeze style bridge. You're not going to have those things with a 335, but if you buy a 345, you're going to have to do those mods if you want to convert it anyway. All right, here is our first S tier guitar, arguably. It's going to be our Les Paul Special. I personally love the Les Paul Special. I am a bit biased. I think if you need bare bones, Les Paul, no frills sounds, solid mahogany body and neck, 2 P90s, these are great. You have to buy a Les Paul Special. Even if you don't buy another P90 style, Gibson guitar, Les Paul Specials are so achievable for most people. It's really just no frills, wood and metal, right? You're getting a great Les Paul sound without all the costs associated with binding on the body or, the different finish work they do or the maple cap or the whatever else they add on to a Les Paul to make them prettier. Les Paul Specials got that. in its core. And I think if you love a simple guitar, a guitar that was made for, you know, students and people who didn't want all the frills of a Les Paul, the Special has it. And let me just tell you, it sounds great. Everyone should be buying a Les Paul Special. They sound absolutely amazing. The 355, we're putting that into, I mean, arguably it could be B or C, but to fill out the tier list, I'll put it in C. Same thing as a 355. The 355 is similar to a 345, just fancier, just has a veritone, has a lot of extra frills. It looks really great, but you'll convert it to mono anyway, and it won't be all that great. The Gibson Flying V. Gibson Flying V. I'm putting this in A. You guys will gripe with me, I'm sure. Why'd you put the Explorer in B and the Flying V in A? Here's why. The Flying V is just cooler, okay? Like, the Flying V is the futuristic Gibson guitar, like the quintessential futuristic Gibson. Like, they made these way before its time, and it was a pioneer of like that new like era of guitar building, like the futuristic like flying cars and the Jetsons and whatever else. They tried to put this in the market. It didn't work out at the time, but has reached an acclaim that surpasses other guitars in the same vein. So I think the Flying V is an awesome addition to anyone's lineup. I personally love the Carina Flying V, just the classic look. It looks like a fancy car, guys. It looks like a vintage classic hoopty, and I just love the Cadillac look of these Gibson guitars. And the Flying V is really going to be the one that stands the test of time for me. And I think that it belongs in A for that reason. I'm not going to use it every day. I'm not going to make it my, you know, ride or die guitar. Like, I'm not going to be my daily driver. But if I need to whip out some sass, I'm whipping out the Flying V, and I'm putting some awe. I'm putting the awe of God into people's ears with that guitar. That's for sure. Next guitar, the SG Special. I don't think the SG Special holds a lot of weight with the Les Paul Special, so I'm gonna put it in C for that reason. You know, once again, if you really love the SG Special, I don't blame you for wanting to swap them. I just think the SG Special for look alone is what's gonna put it down into C for me. Now, we're going to have a couple of more SGs in this tier list, but I just think that if you're going to buy an SG, you're going to go for one of the later models instead of the SG Special. Next, we have our second S tier guitar, the Gibson 335. I think the 335 is hands down probably the guitar to get if you were to go into Gibson and only buy one guitar. This guitar is a pillar of rock, blues, jazz, country music. People who don't understand the 335 and its appeal do not understand guitar music in general. This is the guitar to get if you were to buy a Gibson guitar today. Now, arguably, the quality of a 335 varies on the year and whoever owned Gibson at the time, but overall, the 335 is that semi-hollow, maple, poplar, maple, laminate stamped guitar with a center block. Like, it has all of it. 111/16 nut width, you need that. This is the guitar to buy if you want to be a guitar player. Les Paul Goldtop with P90s. We're putting that in B. I'm not a big fan of Goldtops, the classic ones. If you're going to buy a Goldtop, the P90s are the way to go for that. But with guitars like the Les Paul Special already filling the gap for P90 style Les's, the Goldtop, unless you're looking for classic appeal, it isn't going to be the guitar you reach for every day. All right, the Les Paul Standard 60s. We're putting this in B as well. A lot of Bs today. The Les Paul 60s is the Les Paul I wish it was. Unless you love the thin neck, I'm just not a fan of Les Paul 60s guitars. If I'm going to pick a guitar, I'm going to pick the Les Paul 50s, which goes into A. Like, I think the Les Paul 50s is a great style of guitar. Now, the 50s, what they were known for were more of the standard vintage styled bursts, and they also have the thicker necks. I do love a 50 style neck way more than I love a 60 style neck. That is the guitar for me, and I'm going to pick a Les Paul 50s over any of the other Les Paul variations any day, with maybe the exception of a nice Les Paul custom in ebony or alpine white. All right, next guitar on the list is going to be the Les Paul Goldtop with humbuckers. We're just going to go ahead and put that in C. almost not even worth your time. I don't understand why you would buy a Goldtop with humbuckers unless you just did not want a Les Paul standard 50s instead. Guys, we're not talking vintage here. Like, if you find a vintage anything of these, like, please, like, forget that tier list. Get the vintage guitar, you know? The SG61 standard, you're going to hate me for this. I'm putting in S. I think the SG61 through 63, I think those are the ones that you need to buy. Like a Les Paul Special, 335, SG61. You could put this in A. Like if you were to have like a S and a S plus, like this would go into S and the rest would go into S plus. But like the SG61s through 63s, which are the smaller pickguard SGs, they're awesome guitars. I think they're great. Personally, I love Pelham. I love the cherry finishes on these guitars. This is equivocal of the AC/DC heavy rock era of guitars. I think the SG61s are a cut above most other SGs. I think of the SG61s as a lighter Les Paul Special, but with humbuckers. Like, I think it's awesome. I think everyone should have one. The SG Juniors are weird for me. We didn't put a Les Paul Junior in this list. Maybe we should have. But Juniors are very like hit or miss for me. Across the board, we're going to use this as like a blanket for junior guitars. Single pickup Juniors, I'm going to put in C, unless you really like slide or you really love the style of rock these were associated with. You're just not going to use them. I think people, they spend a bunch of money on these custom shop Juniors, and it makes me laugh because you're never going to sell them, and like they don't have any appeal. So unless you're a guy that knows he wants a Junior, which I do, I have one, like I think it's great, but unless you know what you're going to use it for, and unless you really love one, make this like one of the last guitars on your list that you buy, because you have to have your other food groups lined up guitar-wise before you delve into the single pickup world. You could play a Les Paul Special and only use the bridge pickup if you really wanted the sound of a Junior without having to buy a whole other guitar. All right, doing an addendum. That's why I'm wearing my Cheeseburger in Paradise shirt. Few more guitars we want to do. First of all, the 70s SG. 70s style SG. We're putting that in the D section. Nothing is worse than the walnut large pickguard styled SGs that began in the Norland era in the 70s. They're not going to hold a candle to a 61 or 63 SG. Next, in the Gibson offset collection, we have the Gibson Firebird. Now, the Firebird, I'm going to put in C with another Gibson offset, our Explorer. I just don't see it having a lot of appeal to a lot of people. They are cool. There is a platypus version, ironically, but not for us. The offsets meet a niche in certain styles of music, but don't have wide appeal to most players. Hence, it's going in B, like the other offset. Next, we have the Les Paul Custom. The fancier Les Paul Custom, we're putting this into B as well. Now, I am personally a big fan of the Les Paul Customs. They are really ornate, beautiful looking Les Pauls, and they're a lot of fun to play, but they're just going to be more expensive and hard to find. Now, if you're going to get a Les Paul Custom, get one in ebony. Get like the 1968 Les Paul Custom, the only 60s Les Paul I would probably get. They're pretty awesome guitars, and you can find ones that have 50 specs from the modern era. They're usually a little bit heavier, and therefore, to me, I'm going to be better off with a more traditional 50s Les Paul with a classic burst than maybe like an ebony or an alpine white custom from the time period. Finally, we have the ES330. I'm putting this in A. I really do like the 330. It is a P90 styled 335 without a centered block. It offers you a distinct sound the 335 does not get you because you have to fight feedback and because the guitar is fully hollow. People aren't going crazy for the 330s right now. They might go up in price, but you can find a nice like 68 to 70 330 for around $7,000, and some of the custom shop remakes of the 330 are really cool. So if you're digging the 335 but want something a bit more attainable or just has a different sound, 330, P90s, Bigsby, a lot of fun in that guitar. Guys, and that's it. The Gibson tier list, S to D. We have a top-down look at what guitars are worth getting and what guitars are not. Do you all agree? Do you like these tier lists? Let me know down below if you agree with the tier list. Have a guitar you want to add to the list. I'm sure I forgot one or two here or there. And although I think it's a pretty darn close representation of Gibson's guitars, I could be wrong. I want you guys to argue the points with me. What do you think should be an S? What do you think should be an A? Was I unfair to the 339? Let me know down below, and we'll see you next time on IkeGuitar.